We're trying something new, and we'll see if it works. No, it's recording. All right. Tonight, by popular request, I've been asked to read a book that will bring hope. And one of the most hopeful books I've ever read. Betty Brock's No Flying in the House. Now, I got this copy for cheap off Amazon, which is why the cover is what it is. Take a look. There's the girl. There's Gloria the puppy. But the original illustrations were much more ink and line, very sketchy. You see. And there's plenty of them throughout the story. So I'll try to be showing them as they come up, because they're very beautiful. Because, you see, illustrated by Wallace Tripp, by the way. No Flying in the House, 1970. So the 60s had just ended. The illustrations are very much 60s. So I have the cover that I have, but I would much prefer to have the original cover with the lines as they were originally drawn by Mr. Wallace Tripp. I'm going to have to look him up later and see what else he's done. No Flying in the House, Chapter 1. One morning before breakfast, Mrs. Van Coort stepped out onto her terrace to look at the ocean. On the stone railing, watching a seagull fall out of sight below the cliffs, sat a tiny white dog. It was only 3 inches high and 3 inches long. Almost hidden under his short white fur was a solid gold collar engraved with the word Gloria. "Amazing!" exclaimed Mrs. Van Coort, placing Gloria in her palm. "I thought you were a toy. Are you a puppy?" The dog's blue eyes, searching her wrinkled face, were calm and clear. Mrs. Van Coort shook her head. "No, you are definitely not a puppy. But what an incredible specimen! Only 3 inches high. Do you know any tricks?" Gloria wagged her short curly tail. "A few," she answered. Mrs. Van Coort glanced around the terrace. Except for the dog, she was alone. It was only the roar of the surf, she told herself, but to make sure, yes, again. "Do you know any tricks?" This time Gloria answered very loudly. "About 367. And Mrs. Van Coort put on the glasses. Are you talking? Don't speak more at the time. That's dark. Everything in my mouth," said Mrs. Van Coort. "Stop speaking on my face. Are you lost?" "Not exactly," said Gloria. Mrs. Van Coort endured the small things. Day, cozy fires, fresh flowers, birthday cakes, singing and laughter. Mrs. Van Coort laughed. "What fantastic stuff! This talented dog could be hers." She carried this elegant dog, placed the dog carefully on the table. "I said, your search is ended. I hope it's yours for as long as you care to stay." Gloria glanced behind her. At that moment, a child appeared in the building. She was 3 years old, with short blonde hair. "Come in, Annabelle," said Gloria. "I want you to meet Mrs. Van Coort. She has kindly offered us a home." Not us, said Mrs. Van Court quickly as the child approached the table. Just you, Gloria, just you. Nothing was said about a child. Annabel Tippins is well behaved, said Gloria. No, said Mrs. Van Court. Not a child. Not possibly. Not in this house. I'll never agree to it. Never in a million years. Calmly, Gloria studied Mrs. Van Court's determined face. I couldn't stay without Annabel, she said. Mrs. Van Court shook her head. My house, she said, is not an orphanage. Annabel is not an orphan, said Gloria. Due to circumstances beyond their control, her parents left her in my care. One day they will return. Our stay with you will only be temporary. She almost never changed her mind. She looked at Annabel, then at Gloria. Do you really know 367 tricks? Gloria stood up. She flipped her hind legs into the air and ran around in a circle on her front paws. It was a circus dance, but she accomplished it with incredible ease. Then she did a couple of backflips and a forward roll. Starting with the triple flip, Gloria did all her tricks, jumping, rolling, flying about, her little black nose and paws spinning over the polished table like little tops on rolling dice. After trick 367, she was moving out of breath. Before the sun sets, I tried to find her. All the practice had never seen a performance that could compare with this one. She put her glasses on and off a dozen times, trying to make up her mind. She knew that her opportunity to own a live talking dog 3 inches high and 3 inches long that did hundreds of tricks might never come again. Before the sun sets, repeated Gloria. Mrs. Van Court looked at Annabel and forced a smile. Then she picked up Gloria. Come along then, she said. It's time for breakfast. Except for a few very large lawns overlooked a wide river where far out on the horizon a lighthouse, like a piece of white chocolate. In the dining room, though she had no reason to Miss Peach moved briskly with sergeant. She carried out Mrs. Van Court's every wish with military precision, failing only to obey the order to diet. Secretly, Miss Peach carried candy in her pocket. A child in the nursery again? She exclaimed, smiling down at Annabel. Miss Peach was accustomed to Mrs. Van Court's sometimes unusual guests, who ranged from turbaned Maharajas to kimono Japanese, and her surprise when Gloria said, How do you do? Registered only in her kind, llama-like eyes. After breakfast, Mrs. Van Court and Miss Peach took Gloria and Annabel up to the old nursery. It was a large, plain room, with white fireplace. Miss Peach raised the blinds, letting in a bright sunshine. She opened the tall windows and the balcony door to let in the smell of the sea and the roar of the surf breaking against the cliffs below the lawn. Mrs. Van Court walked around the all we need are some clothes for after. Unfortunately, I was unable to bring them. A moment later, she spied the electric train that ran under the little white bed, and she slid down to investigate. Because she was only 3, she didn't notice that there were no dolls. But Gloria noticed. Once, this nursery had been used by a boy. Mrs. Van Court decided to show off her fancy dolls that very afternoon. Please tell cook to make some petite. To meet my new friend, she carried Gloria into the bathroom. After I have bathed you, I'm going to replace that plain wooden cover. The hair on Gloria's back. Her voice was calm. Bathing. Annabel and I kissed back. But Gloria refused to change collars. She also refused to speak to the guests. "You can't refuse," said Mrs. Van Forth. "I'm counting on it." Someday. Mrs. Van Forth was accustomed to getting her own way. But she wanted to make it up to her. Gloria did her best to treat her. That afternoon, when they were gathered in the drawing room, Mrs. Van Forth placed Gloria on a bench. Gloria walked to the center of the mantel and bowed. Everyone clapped. Then, while Annabel tapped smartly on a toy drum, Gloria dove into space, somersaulting 4 times in midair before landing, without a splash, in a bowl of water on the hearth. Here she is doing a trick. Everybody gasped. Then they clapped and clapped, calling out, "Encore! Encore!" while Gloria bowed. She did all 367 tricks. She was a sensation. "What an act!" cried Mrs. Van Forth. "Eleanor Adams wants to buy you!" Immediately she opened the door. The next day, Gloria went shopping with Mrs. Van Forth. Mrs. Van Forth was standing up at a counter covered in purses. The salesman was very kind and but when Mrs. Van Forth got on an elevator, Gloria found herself looking to check out his phone. Then she began to protest the whole when they arrived at the church, Gloria began to laugh. The bathroom opened the door, but hearing the dog was closed, Gloria finally all Gloria like it. For Gloria's convenience, she had the nursery bell lowered. Gloria could ring for anything she needed. Her knowledge is fantastic, Mrs. Van Forth told Miss Finch. Did you know that she can discuss any subject in any language? She won't speak in one stranger, said Mrs. I asked her a question in the grocery store, and she barked again. Said Miss Peach. Everyone loves Gloria. Charles takes her in the car wherever she wants to go. Cook sends up special tidbits after a party. I've been playing checkers with her. She moves the pieces with her mouth. The little dog was But Sharon isn't the governor. Gloria Gloria taught Annabelle to walk behind her ears and to put away her face. Sitting on Annabelle's shoulder, she read to the child, taught her to play games, and heard her prayers. She took her for walks, swam beside her at the beach, and sat in her lap when she was in the dentist's chair. She allowed Annabelle to dress her doll. Annabelle was permitted to join Mrs. Van Court and Gloria for afternoon tea by the fire in the sitting room, or for early supper in the great candlelit dining room. By the time she was 6, because of her association with Gloria, Annabelle had developed such respect for small things that Mrs. Van Court allowed her to visit as well. Around the walls, golden glass old. Some, like the white mouse with ruby eyes, were enameled and studded with precious jewels. But the most famous were the golden toys made for kings and emperors, with wind-up keys in their backs to make them move. Of all the golden toys in Mrs. Van Court's collection, Annabelle's favorite was a gold swan with diamond eyes. When it was wound up, spread its wings, stretched, straightened, Gloria's favorite, a hippopotamus dressed as a four-letter doctor, played a tune while a tiny monkey with a baby collar danced. Of course, Mrs. Van Court never let anyone, not even Miss Peach, touch the contents of her cabinets, but it gave her the greatest pleasure to bring out the small jeweled objects of enamel gold for Annabelle and Gloria to admire at a respectful distance. They're worth a king's ransom, Miss Peach. They're worth a king's ransom. Let's swap them all for in the afternoon, Mrs. Van Court and Gloria went shopping, leaving Annabelle in the care of Miss Peach. While the housekeeper sorted sheets in the linen closet, Annabelle slipped away and went into the drawing-room alone. Cold shadows crowded the big room, usually so bright on a clear day. Wind-driven rain tapping against the glass door sounded as though the sun was so. She could hear the rain dripping down the kitchen. Suddenly, the door of the terrace banged open. A cold, wet blast swept into the room. The chandelier tinkled like a wind chime. Annabelle put her hand over her mouth. Out on the terrace, the wind and first, the curtains flapped into the room like sails. Gathering her courage, Annabelle moved to the door and tried to close it. She battled the curtains. With all her strength, she pushed. At last, the door closed. To her surprise, on turning back into the room, she saw that the door was of gold metal. He could center the room inside her favorite finger. Glancing around to make sure she was alone, Annabelle reached for the tiny swan. Its diamond eyes. Every time. Swan's neck jerked one back. Annabelle shook it again. How could it blame? She'd been so careful, just like Mrs. Van Court always was. Close to tears, she shoved the swan back into place on a flat shelf and started to close the door. With a smile, very clearly you know Mrs. Van Court is close to the Annabelle's first thought was to scream from his feet, back in the road. She realized that it was the whole point and the line. Bravely, she stepped closer, peering through the open connection. The crowd saw the fence itself, boxing the door. How did you open the terrace door? Annabelle remembered it had taken all her strength to close it. Yeah, she laughed a little and ended on I'm counting. Black imagine a gold clothes. No. All you do that at all. On the other hand, when I look at you, I don't see a little girl. You don't see a little girl. Taking her for a fairy, George Pitt. But I'm not a fairy, insisted Henry. Do you know Gloria? That nodded. Rather indeed. I suppose you're going to tell me Gloria isn't a dog, exclaimed Annabelle. The cat yawned. That is a nice dog. This time it doesn't matter. If Gloria isn't a dog, she would have told me. You're terrible. Get rid of me. Right off, you already told me. That's really, really nice. I like it. Laura was like that. That's really nice. I like it. Laura was like that. I'll fix the squad. Annabelle wasn't so sure. Only good. Do you promise? She promised faithfully. Don't forget to protect anyone in the house of my business. That swan will immediately break the 1,500. Annabelle didn't want to think about it. Don't forget. Now, said the cat, you'd better be getting back to the nursery before you miss. Keep the cabinet door ajar. clothes all the time. So now, I didn't think cats liked me. Oh, excuse me. I forgot to wash it. Will you be coming back? Then, back. We open up the ocean with skeleton top of the all the way up. For as long as she could remember, he had seen hanging on his bare wall a large portrait of Mrs. Van Gort's husband who was down at the a boy leaned against the street. Once, a little dog hopped on the side. Pretty one? Miss Peach nodded. The prettiest, I thought. In fact, it was my favorite, too. Did it wind up? Oh, my, yes. It even swished its tail. It was a fancy one. Annabelle sat up. She shivered. Its tail? She whispered. What sort of toy was it? Seeing her shiver, Miss Peach felt Annabelle's forehead. Don't tell me you're catching a cold at school. Please, Miss Peach. Was it a cat? Good, said Miss Peach. What? A little gold. Yes, emerald egg. End of chapter 3.